Most heartfelt greetings and salutations, theydies and gentlethems. I eagerly welcome you to Sturgeon's most premier station, Dusklight Radio, hosted by yours truly, the incorporeal, iridescent, irresponsible Everett J. Blackwell. Perhaps you know of us Blackwells. We offered the first visual aid clinic for those going through bad trips when on strong drugs, a way to find and eliminate the more undesirable parts of tripping balls. It was called Blackwell's Bad Trip Bohemian Haberdashery. And Cousin Fulton wasn't the best at names, but people liked the word haberdashery, and it stuck. Folks would come in or be shepherded in by one of death's emissaries that keeps an eye on those who may find themselves in an unfortunate end while supremely high. Their job is 24/7. Maybe wandering into the forest of the Leshy and thinking that climbing frames could have them meet an unfortunate end, or going into Sturgeon's sewer system to pretend they're a Ninja Turtle, only to be eaten ass first by the Kappa. That sort of thing. It's a thankless job being an emissary of death. We'd hook up wires to the brain and a small clip onto the earlobe that honed into their brain frequencies. Then, an image would generate on the screen, and one of our family or a trained voodoo practitioner would be handed a Super Nintendo controller to eliminate the problem. Trained professionals only, folks. Now, I know what you're thinking. Up, up, down, down, left, right, select, start to win, right? Or better yet, cheat and hack the trip. Well, we tried that. It summoned an entity known as Noldus, who wore a thick cloak made of collapsed stars and the broken dreams of a million artists. He stood in front of the screen and began lifting his veil, showing us the face of a man who controls the dreamscape, a place we tried to interfere with. Cousin Fulton was the one playtesting that day, and, well, he's been in servitude ever since. We don't see much of him anymore. Not in the waking world, at least. Probably for the best. Yelp reviewers did us in the end, though. Too many people saying their trips got too mundane, too samey. Not realizing that the spirit animal they were talking to wasn't any such thing, but actually a parasite sending them to their untimely death. There's only so many 0 stars you can take before you close up shop, folks. But we still have the equipment in storage. You know, desperate times and all that. Kinda relevant for the story in hand, I suppose. If you're just joining us, first of all, welcome and do not skip. I promise each of these are unique in their own way. We don't borrow astral projections of the world's most creative and broken artists and throw shackles on them for nothing, you know. Anyway, I'm Dusklight's main and most fabulous half-dead host. My job at this fine radio station is to bring you some of the most twisted, interesting, and downright bizarre tales that I and my wonderful many-legged runners collect from the far corners of Sturgeon and beyond. Some of them will make you laugh, some will make you cry, and some will encourage you to diet. Now, you don't need me to tell you how to live your life, but you didn't need to go on a diet. At least not this one. The story led you to this diet, however. It's complex, the numbers are a confusing jumble to anyone who tries to follow it, and nobody ever sees you eat. But you do eat. Just things that you'd prefer to hide from them. Only you understand what this diet is, as guided by the story. Instructed by the story. One day you look in the mirror and admire your more slim physique, toned muscles, and you smile at yourself in admiration of the work you did. But your reflection doesn't smile back. It grimaces and holds the diet plan up to the mirror, scrawled in blood and a viscous substance like molasses. Your original form coming back into focus as it asks with pained eyes, why? You did not need to diet. You were always so beautiful. You are so beautiful. You just needed to listen to your reflection and not the story. But now the reflection has gotten loose. It is hurting, and it is coming for you. Let us hope the story offers you another plan. It's time to introduce our next story for this double feature. It comes to us, once again, from head custodian T.J. Lee. Now, TJ has sent me a polite telegram to remind you all that this is another entry about our wonderful town Sturgeon and the strange ongoings within it, both past and present. He encourages you to check out the last Sin Eater story over on Romnex's channel after this one, and that a familiar name may be popping up for eagle-eared fans. He wrote this in crayon. Purple crayon. I can tell because when he smiles at me with that childlike glee from the window, it's staining his teeth. I told HR about this behavior before. I thought they'd have talked to him by now. He's got something in his hands, and it's just out of my view from the booth, but he keeps patting it gently when I'm not looking, hiding it behind his back. If I just crane my neck to... He's put a stern note up on the window and is staring at me with contempt. It says, Lee from HR has gone on a sabbatical. I don't... TJ's shaking his head and looking down at the shape. He's talking to it. He nods and makes that gesture where he puts his fingers to his eyes and then to mine before sauntering off, mop bucket in hand and a half-eaten purple crayon on his front pocket. I think I'm going to be a little nicer to him from now on, until we get a new HR person in. If you do like TJ's work here or elsewhere, be sure to show him some love over on Twitter at TJLee, his subreddit r/TJLee, his podcast, The Writer's Mythos, where he looks into the untold tales of the world's most famous horror writers. We're trying to grow it, folks. And if you somehow have time left over, maybe you should consider pre-ordering his first novella in the Chronicles of Sturgeon, The Last Sin Eater, as adapted by the amazing Romnex, releasing May 7th in Kindle and paperback. He's eagerly hoping that since it's in the top 100 for a couple of categories ahead of release day, he can get it to number 1 by May 7th and slap best-selling writer next to head custodian on his resume. All of these are linked below. Special thanks must be given first to Mandy Mo for rendering yours truly in the beauteous image you see when you look at our page. Next, Dusklight bows at the altar of Trevor Henderson, the man behind Siren Head, for allowing Dusklight to use some of the images he's captured of various abominations. Our cast today features our janitor and narrator TJ Lee. And of course, lest we forget, some of the music you hear in our videos is provided by the Dark Somnium with gracious thanks. With that, the sun has set and dusk has crawled into the studio once more, and we appreciate you joining us on our premiere. Whether you're working, prepping to sleep, or evading the formless void that will one day consume us all, Blackwell is here to soothe your ears and captivate your soul. Now, close your eyes and take a deep breath. The scene has been set and the light is on. It's time to walk towards it.
I should preface this by stating that I'm not much of a smoker. Wow. Amazing tone to set on a 420 experience, right? I just don't want to lie to you. Not when discussing the shit that went down. I finally focused enough to talk. I know some of the specialists here are keen to talk to me some more, but for now, I've ignored them and decided to focus on getting this out there. This needs to be explained, and I am desperate to get this out of my system. Literally and figuratively. I never want to experience this high again. The Eldritch Bud came up in conversation last 420 with my best friends Kai and perennial stoner Kenny. It was right as COVID was spreading across the world and stopping any of us from seeing one another for a traditional wake and bake. Kai would eat the brownies and binge Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'd take advantage of the abundance of snacks while politely declining the dank kush. And Kenny would show off a new strain he'd bought from the marijuana store in town. Bro, the Eldritch Bud is like... Man, it's like the dark holy grail of the weed mythos. It's like the Darth Vader of the weed universe. Or the grizzly bear of the weed kingdom. His eyes glazed over, and taking a drag from his blunt, the smoke-filled video screen added to the atmosphere. Strongest shit in Sturgeon, my guy. It's a strong strain, I get it. Can we eat it too, or? Kai asked, shoveling ramen into his mouth at lightning speed while screaming expletives at a League game in the background. Our Discord server was rarely ever free of some kind of shit-talking, so it was easy to block out. Nah, I mean, yeah, I guess you can eat it, but It's not just strong, bruh. It's like dark. Shit makes you see things, go to a special place. They say it helps you, like, ascend, and that it can either be the best or worst experience, depending on if you're ready. Kenny looked intense, but excited, as if he were talking about a mythical creature. It changes you inside and out, man. You go in one guy, come out another. Special. Different. Oh no, man. Isn't that the kind of shit mushrooms and psychedelics do? I'm not an expert or anything. I trailed off. Kai swallowed a mouthful of noodles before making a mock ringing noise. Ring, 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 ring. Oh, shit. Paging Dr. Tyson McGraw, drug MD. He puffed up his chest and pretended to be a busty woman, adding a breathy voice in for good measure. McGraw-senpai, you need to just tell us if this is a different strain, bro. Ooh. Laughter rang out through the call and I felt embarrassed. But I knew enough about weed to know that it could do some weird things. But not the type that Kenny was describing. Still, when the laughter died down, he was steadfast in his resolve. I swear, guys, I'm gonna grab some for when we can hang safely next time. I know a guy. He said it wasn't the right time, but that he'd hit me up when he'd got more, and even gave me a discount, man. And this time, he pointed to the camera. At me. You're trying some, Ty. I know you've been curious. What better place to try than with your friends? I want to see if you see what I see, bro. He was right. I had expressed interest, but I'd never worked up the courage. The guys would never pressure me, but I did feel I was missing out on trying at least the once. When he said friends, I could still recall Kai's dumb, cheesy grin, still pretending to be a nurse and get a rise out of me. That image will never leave my mind with all the things that succeeded it. I agreed, and the conversation was forgotten in a sea of lengthy Discord calls over the summer and winter of 2020. Memes, failed online relationships, and video game tournaments dominated the conversations. But, as things began to shift, and we all found ourselves free and safely able to hang out, Kenny messaged the server on the 19th with just 3 words in all caps. I got it. He attached a photo of himself smiling ear to ear with a large bag of black and green material. It looked almost thorny and thick in texture, but his excitement was infectious. I couldn't help but share in his enthusiasm when I replied, "We'll be there, snacks and all." We rolled up in the late afternoon as the sun began to set. Kai holding an assortment of potato chips, sodas, and ready for what I anticipated would be, at most, a very mellow experience with some mild worries as I settled in. Kenny led us downstairs and had everything laid out and ready. A small amount of the black and green bud still in the bag, the smell of weed, and a hint of something irony lingering in the air. He'd pre-rolled an 8th for me and gave me a strong pat on the shoulder. No sense of going in soft, bro. We want to enjoy this. He grinned and handed Kai a stack full of brownies, undoubtedly full of the same stuff, while Kenny helped himself to an ungodly large blunt, passing us a lighter before we each nodded and prepared. I won't lie. I was nervous. Smoking had never been something I cared for, but the combination of wanting to bond with my closest friends and experience something new post-COVID gave me the confidence necessary to push on. See you on the other side, my dudes! Kai grabbed his edible and had 2 at once, while Kenny and I sparked up and took a deep inhale. And this is where we reached the part of this experience that brings me here. To you. Because I don't know what we smoked, but it wasn't weed. Within 60 seconds, my mouth grew ostensibly dry. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth, and it felt like a Herculean effort to pry it away. Each of my teeth vibrated, and my jaw wouldn't stop rotating in its socket. It took everything I had to focus and ask Kenny a question, his eyes glistening on something beyond my purview. Where did you get this shit? Every consonant sounded cracked, like I was chewing on sandpaper. He didn't shift in his seat as he replied, didn't move a goddamn muscle, save for his mouth. Guy calling himself the Arbiter. Think he wore a trench coat? or a hoodie. I don't know. But he hid his face and he used one of those fucking voice changer things. Said it'd be the ride of my life and that I'd never forget it. And that it changed me for the better. So that was good enough for me. He took another hit and I watched his eyes widen as if something was coming into focus. Just keep going and enjoy the ride. I felt sick. My feet were sinking into the floor and the leather chair was merging with my skin. But I figured it was just jitters and did as instructed. Taking another deep inhale and feeling the heat rush through my chest. A low, incessant hum filled my ears, the kind of electronic boom you hear in movies when the world slows down. The equivalent of my brain sending out signals that enemies are nearby in an RPG, but my body was unable to respond. Instead, all I could do was cast my eyes in Kai's direction, seeing if he was feeling what I was feeling. Unlikely after just a couple minutes of edibles, right? But it was dark outside by the time my eyes settled on his slumped position across the room. The moon was steadily rising in the window behind him. How long had it been? An hour? 2? Kai was looking at his hands, slowly turning the palms and drooling into his lap. A thick, green mucus that dangled from his lips and had pooled to a staggering amount on his pants. He fixated on one particular digit, twisting it to find something and extending it out to point at the exact same spot Kenny had been staring at, still drooling and devoid of any kind of expression. Door was all he managed to say before stifled, awkward grunts of laughter escaped his lips. I turned to look and felt the room shift with me, the decor melting away and the roof of the house tearing off to leave us in a space of red and green mist, floating in place. I could still feel the fabric of the leather chair sticking to my skin, threatening to rip the flesh if I so much as twitched too much. I knew my feet were on the floor, but the sensation akin to pins and needles gave a sensation of floating that I fully gave into as I caught on that I'd once again taken a hit. The smell of this weed now the only thing I could perceive. Ty, you see me, man? I blinked and waving my arms around as if I was swimming, my body floating in this strange absence of space. As the shape came into focus, Kenny dashed past me, directing me to a door that Kai was now sitting in front of. Yeah, I see you. But where is this? What is this? He grins. It's a sober and educated grin. He's been here before. Don't worry, man, you're new. Well, follow me through the trip and you'll be fine. Just don't deviate and listen to what I tell you to do, okay? You'll know when you found your door. He puts an arm around me and gives me an encouraging push as I glide down to Kai. And don't bother him. He's working to unlock it for us. As we passed Kai, cross-legged and naked, still drooling, he was clearly focused on something. Eyes rolled back and a jaw slack as a single digit still pointed towards the door, twitching and contorting as if picking an invisible lock. The door itself was grand, standing in this space at a towering 50 feet high. Marvelous sigils and carvings I'd never seen before adorned the sides, coalescing to form a pattern that met in the center with 2 snakes shaped like doorknobs. Once the door is open, we descend to the next level. You may not remember what you see here, man, but it will change you, bruh. Kenny was proud, hands on hips, and far wiser than I'd ever heard him. It was almost unnerving. This is the best gift I could give you. Kai's only been here once before, but he found his own way in. As will you. What did we take, Kenny? What was that? I couldn't shake the fear in the pit of my stomach, and the mist around me shuddered at the question. Kenny grinned. I may have told a little white lie. This is a strain, but not of weed. The truth is, I don't know what it fully is. But the guy who gave it to me said it's the ultra high. And he was not wrong. I've actually spent most of the year learning about this place, man. It's given me so much, even if my waking body suffers for it. He paused, shaking his head as he ran a hand across the fine wood of the door, a creaking now joining the low hum. Whatever Kai was doing, it was working. I get headaches, Ty.
Start to hear things that aren't there. Muscles ache. I forget who I am sometimes. And the nosebleeds. God, the nosebleeds, dude. I can't function out there anymore. So I asked him for the best shit he has to ensure I found the solution here. And, most importantly, showed you what you've been missing out on.
He chuckled, hiding clear discomfort behind pure confidence. Something was here that he wanted. I opened my mouth to speak, but the door swung open and a soft light eked out, bathing us all and making my skin bubble. Kenny took off, pushing his body downwards as if diving into an ocean, and passed the threshold of the door, a puff of smoke in his wake.
Dive in and let your senses guide you, man. Don't deviate from them. You'll find your way, dude.
Well, it's not like I could have leave in the middle of a high, I thought. I resigned myself to see this through despite the dread and pushed down until I was hanging on the doorframe, taking one last look back at Kai before I descended. I almost screamed. Stood up, legs splayed out in a low squat, knees buckling under the pressure, and eyes fully rolled back into the head, blood seeping from his right nostril. He smiled and, while pointing through the door at something impermeable to me, gave a soft wave with his free hand. The flesh rapidly melting from it and revealing the complex nerves and muscles that pushed the digits forward. The flesh was pooling onto the floor and down his leg as he got one single word out. Smell. A force pushed me through the door and hurtling into the cloudy mist within. As I fell through these strange clouds, my body twisting and turning with a flash of colors passing too fast to process, the smell of a barbecue filled my nostrils and my mind. In that moment of nostalgic haze, I wondered to what it must be like to descend through a gas giant, seeing the magnificent colors and smells without the immediate death, an otherworldly serenity both familiar and unfamiliar. As soon as the thought came, it left me for a rapidly approaching obsidian black floor. I had just enough time to cover my face as I slammed into it, ribs crunching and the wind knocked out of me. I don't know how pain was a thing in these situations, and I was immediately concerned I'd be hurt in the real world, but it gave way to the sight of a prone Kenny at the end of this hallway, whimpering in front of an even bigger door. Colossal statues lying either side, each in a series of decompositions starting from healthy to exposed bone, and finally, just large skeletons with thick armor pushing down on their tired frames. Every one of them directing their gaze at Kenny.
Dude, you okay?
I called out, and he immediately jumped out of his skin, turning to me and holding his arms up.
You can't hear them.
He looked genuinely upset that I had appeared in front of him.
That means it won't work. After all, you cannot hear them. You deviated without knowing it. So here we are.
I frowned. He'd been the one to push me to do this, to follow him into whatever the fuck this drug trip was.
But you said to...
I protested, the hum dramatically increasing in volume as the doors began to open and Kenny's breathing grew shallow.
They said you'd dare to do this with me. Since I was so far gone out there, a body rotting away from the inside out, I could make it work in here. I just need to get you across the threshold, man. This door is the last one. It has everything I'm looking for. But you're gonna need to take a different path. You cannot follow me in here. Take Kai with you, if you can.
The contents within the door are still impossible to see. They're opening painfully slowly. What do you mean? Can't I learn too? We could do this again, just maybe with a lesser strain. I don't know what use it was to reason within a drug-fueled dream, but it felt so real to me. He shook his head.
No, man. This door is meant for me. But it seems fate intervened anyway.
He laughed. It was hollow, full of bitter irony.
When we passed out, I made a mistake. It's costing us right now. I was the last to go out, and before I joined you, The voice that lurks deep within this place, it told me that all that knowledge, that chance to ascend was right here. But I couldn't go back, man.
He turned to look at the statues, the things they all gave up in the pursuit of knowledge.
What I want is beyond that door, bruh. I can't leave. Not until I know.
He tilts his head up to the thick clouds above us.
Can't you hear it, Ty? They're just beyond the door, calling to me. Listen.
I tried, straining my ears as best I could to sift through the hum and the creaks. I closed my eyes to help me focus. In that moment, something hissed from the distance. A terrible voice carried on the wind that told of horrible things. Things that it seen, done, and wanted me to do. I snapped my eyes open and felt my heart beating out of my chest, disgust at the forefront of my emotions. Kenny looked at me, a mixture of disappointment and understanding.
It's okay. You aren't ready, man. This shit needs practice, tolerance buildup. They wanted you here because your family's special. Even in this town, everyone knows the McGraws. And I hoped you'd be of good use to them here if you just saw what I saw. Maybe they wouldn't hurt you. We could have both been something great, man.
He sighed, and his lip trembled, wiping a tear from his eye.
Well, I guess that wasn't meant to be. So I'll take the ascension for us both.
Words caught in my throat, and the coherent blended into the incoherent seamlessly, as if following the narrative structure of a dream. Key bits of information were being omitted as he stood there, weak smile, and looked me dead in the eye.
It's all right, man. We'll meet again.
I've sat here for hours trying to find the words for what I saw when those doors fully opened and the unholy howls erupted from within its chambers. So many hands, appendages, and undulations sprung from its depths to envelop Kenny. My friend. He smiled, let it happen, and didn't resist as they pulled him in further. I ran forward, my eyes blurring so as not to focus on what I was witnessing, desperate to save my friend, but unable to stop the doors closing on me. I scratched, kicked, punched, and wailed, but the doors would not budge. Within a few minutes, I felt the pulling of my body as it started to rise up and away from the obsidian walkway, away from Kenny, and up through the thick clouds, now stained black and making my eyes water. Back through the first double door, Kai still waving aimlessly. I grab him by the still intact arm and pull him with me as we hurtle towards the starting point of this strange, otherworldly realm. As we look back and see the last set of doors close, the colours shifting from soft greens to bright oranges, all he can croak with fractured vocal cords is one word. Burn. I awoke to the sound of flames licking at the upholstery, beams of wood cracking under the pressure and splintering to the ground, my head housing a thunderstorm, and with every movement my eyes screamed in protest, threatening to burst out of my sockets. When I tried to sit up, a pair of horrific realizations washed over me in tandem. The house was on fire. Kenny's blunt had fallen onto the floor and sparked a flame that rapidly grew throughout the home into a blazing inferno. And secondly, as a result of this, part of my back was fused to the leather chair. I looked to Kai, his hand resting in the flames and almost completely singed to the bone, still catatonic and undoubtedly at risk. I had 2 minutes at best. I sucked in air, bit down on my lower lip, and pushed up with all my weight. A disgusting ripping sound of the tearing of Velcro cut through the air, and a wet feeling drenched my back. The pain was indescribable, but I am thankful that adrenaline was there to mask it in that moment. I grabbed the throw blanket we'd had spare for when the night got chilly and threw it over my body, darting round to grab Kai as delicately as I could and heading for the window behind him, breaking it open before hoisting him out, thankful that we were on the ground floor and, at worst, he just hit the bushes with a nasty thud. By the time I gotten out, it was impossible to get back in through the window. Racing round to the front door, I pulled out the keys in my pocket and tried desperately to get them open. I scratched, kicked, punched, and wailed, but the doors would not budge. Kenny. Kenny! I breathed, staring at the house I'd become so familiar with as it was consumed by the flames. As the distant lights of the fire services and paramedics grew brighter, my body found its cue to let me sink, mercifully, into unconsciousness. This brings us up to speed on what happened. I awoke with some heavy bandaging on my shoulders and was told a skin graft could be needed, but that for today I would need to field some questions about the house fire from a couple of detectives. Sure enough, a couple of men in their 30s saunter in, one in a thick trench coat and the other in a neat three-piece suit, both well-mannered and polite.
Your friend Kai Tokugawa hasn't woken up yet, so we can't get his statement. Do you know what started the fire, Mr. McGraw?
I felt the familiar burning on my spine and swallowed, nodding. Yeah, our friend Kenny, the guy who owns the house. He lit a cigarette in his hand and fallen asleep. It fell to the floor and... here we are. I shook my head. Also, we could try some weird weed. What a fucking waste. There was no point in hiding it. They'd find out through my medical report anyway. The two of them looked at me quizzically. The man in the trench coat leaned forward. Kenny who? You co-own that house with someone? I stared, confused. What? No, that was Kenny's house. I lived on... I paused. The image of where I lived prior was blank. As I tried to recall it, all I could see were the grand doors in that strange space.
If that's not your house, why'd you have the keys to it? The neighbors said you went out around 10 p.m. the night before. Said you were excitedly telling someone you got some ultra shit.
Well, the man in the three-piece suit made a note on his pad, leaving it on my table.
I hope it was worth it, kid.
Why couldn't I remember where I lived? Why couldn't I remember Kenny's last name? What was going on? The man in the trench coat grinned at me.
Was it worth it, Mr. McGraw?
Did you like what you saw?
We've never seen someone come back from it still coherent. We're ever so curious about what you encountered in there. Ever so curious.
I felt sick. The room started to spin, and the two of them were ushered out as I was calmed down. It's been a few hours, and the men have asked to see me again, this time with some equipment and experimental medication. I have a feeling I know what it is. I don't know what we took. I don't know what happened down there. I haven't seen Kai since this began, and I can no longer remember what Kenny looked like. What he sounded like. Fuck! Were they even male? I don't know. The worst part is the note that the man in the three-piece suit left. I've looked at it multiple times, but every time it makes me feel sick. I can't leave, my body's wrecked, and it's only a matter of time before they come back. 5 words, accompanied by a strange sketch of an atlas moth beneath it. You have to go back.
You know, I never was much of a smoker myself, but I can see the appeal of wanting to commemorate a big day such as 420 with a relaxing session among friends. Though it seems one of Sturgeon's notorious orders have expanded their influence. For those interested, Sturgeon has several, special interest groups within its borders that have their own fanatical views on the inhabitants of both the blighted humans and the folklore nightmare denizens. Some believe in capturing the nightmares and simply eliminating them all. Others believe in serving them and feeding non-blighted humans to them. A clear power dynamic. The moths, well, they think they can harness them, capture them, control them into doing their bidding. I don't think this is the last y'all will hear of him. Let's put it that way. Listeners, if you want a primer on the orders or Sturgeon itself in between these broadcaster stories going up, please let me know in the comments and I'll see about putting something together. It would be a joy to educate y'all on the still-growing library of the tales about Sturgeon. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out some of our other transmissions. We're adding them very regularly, and we'd love to have you as part of the Dusklight family by subscribing, hitting the bell of torment and turmoil. It's just a normal bell, but adding stuff like that is nice. And leave a comment with stories you'd love for my many-legged runners to find. Just leave them in places where they don't see you. They don't like to be seen. Dedication needs to be rewarded, and we thank more and more of our loyal listeners for joining these premieres each and every time. This time we give thanks to Haley Clark, Colin Squire, Jason and Gamma, our terrifying twosome at every single premiere, and the ultra-talented Tilly for giving us their valuable time. I hope we can continue this forward growth and spread our spores to the far corners of Sturgeon and YouTube, infecting the airwaves with our intoxicating presence. And when we hit 500, we got something wonderful planned. And one last time, listeners, close your eyes and breathe with me. Remember, no matter how bad things are, how cruel people can be, and how heavy your shoulders may feel with the weight of the world bearing down on them, Dusklight will always be here to lift the load and provide you with some respite. As the days recently have shown us, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but there is a lot of work to do. And I'd just like to say, horror is for everyone. This space is for everyone. And I welcome anyone to create something with a similar sounding name to my own. There ain't no place for gatekeeping in this house, and there is always room at the table. Infinite chairs, infinite voices, a delightful chorus of representation, and maybe some screams. Definitely some screams. Drink some water, watch a nature documentary, eat some takeout, and sleep on the cool side of the pillow, and know that you matter, you are loved. Every day is another chance. Greet everyone you see with kindness. I'll see you again when the sun sets and dusk enters the station.